Good morning, students. This is Aristotle's Poetics, part 10, and I'm Dr. Nilofer Kauri. We have already discussed 9 parts of Poetics, and in those 9 parts, we have discussed around 18 chapters that have been based on definition of tragedy, the components of tragedy, tragic element, tragic hero, plot, etc. So let's move on to the next part, that is chapter 19 to 22. Summary of chapter 19 to 22 we'll be discussing in this part. Now, Aristotle, having discussed plot and character, he turns his attention toward thought and then diction. So, specifically, he never mentions melody or spectacle because they are not important elements for him. We have already discussed into the previous lectures. You can check that. Uh, Aristotle defines thoughts as everything that is effected by means of language. Thus, when agents try to prove or disprove a point, to arouse emotion, or to inflate or deflate a matter, they are exhibiting thought. Thought is closely linked to rhetoric, and Aristotle points to the more thorough discussion to be found in his writing on that later subject. So, everything which is being a part of everything that has been a part of tragedy or of the part of plot has been affected by the mean of language. Thus, when agents try to prove or disprove a point, to arouse emotion, or to inflate or deflate a matter, the agents which are responsible for creating the agents of the plot, agents which carry the event, incidents of the event, they are exhibiting thought. What they are doing, they are exhibiting their thought, the inner qualities. Thought is closely linked to rhetoric, and Aristotle points to the more thorough discussion to be found in his writing on the later subject on the thought and the rhetoric. Aristotle divides the subject of diction into 8 parts: first letter, then syllable, then conjunction, then article, then noun, then verb, then case, and speech. Okay, these are the subjects of diction, and we can say part of sentences. Though many of these items are identical to our modern uses of them, we should note that Aristotle is concerned less with written language and more with spoken language. The way it is being spoken more exposes the qualities, inner qualities of the characters rather than the written language. As a result, Aristotle treats the latter, the fundamental building block of a language, as a unit sound rather than as a single written character. So, the spoken letter is the base of the dialogue. The concept of case, unfamiliar to English speakers, deals with the different uses of a word. So, how a word is being used, that is the concept of case, which is different everywhere into the world. For instance, with the dog and for the dogs are different cases of dog and walk are different cases of walk. Speech is more like what we would call a clause than a sentence. If does not have to contain a verb, but it must be made up of significant parts. So a clause is equally important as a sentence because it contains the significant part. Now he moves his attention. So chapter 19 to 20 have these very brief discussion about the language. Now chapter 21 is concerned with the structures and uses of the noun, though it is concerned primarily with the uses of metaphor. So he says noun, but actually it is related to metaphor. Aristotle distinguishes 4 ways metaphors can be used. Number 1, the genus to species relationship, where a moral general term is used instead of a specific term. Aristotle uses the example of here stands my ship, where stand is more general way of saying is anchored. Okay, so stand means anchored. Here stands my ship. So we know that a ship can be anchored, it does not actually stand. So there is a connection between the relationship or relationship between the species of the words. Next, the species to genus relationship, where a more specific term is used in place of a general term. There, we use a general term in space in first kind. In case of in case we use a general term than a specific term. Now here we use specific term than a general term. Here he gives example that truly 10,000 good deeds have Ulysses wrote, where 10,000 is a specific term representing the more general, a large number. Okay, instead of saying a large number, it says 10,000. The species to species relationship, where one specific term replaces another. And number 4, metaphor from analogy consists of substitutions between x is to y type relationship. For instance, old age is to life as evening is to day. So we can speak metaphorically about the old age of the day or the evening of life. Aristotle concludes his discussion of diction with a few remarks on style. A poet should aim for a middle ground, expressing himself with clarity but without meanness. Aristotle suggests that the use of ordinary words in ordinary language is mean and prosaic. Poetry can be spiced up by the use of foreign or strange terms, metaphor, or compounded words. Okay, so poetry has more expression than the prose, this means to say. Now, however, an over enthusiastic use of such devices will render poetry unintelligible. Too many foreign words will make the poetry barbaric, and too much metaphor will turn it into a big riddles. Okay, so poetry should carry a beautiful language, a poetic language, metaphors and similes and other terms, but uh, too much metaphors and too much barbaric poetry, foreign words will turn the poetry into barbaric, and it will turn the poetry into a big riddle. It will become a puzzle, confusion, like many writers we study nowadays. The key is to apply these devices in moderation. Okay, these devices can be used in order to moderate the uh, language. Of these different devices, Aristotle most well use the metaphor, as it cannot be taught only by grasped intuitively. Intuitively, there is a certain level of genius in being able to identify similarities between dissimilar things. So, a certain level of genius which can made it able to identify similarities between dissimilar things. Metaphor is something which can find similes or similarities between dissimilar things. That is its quality, that is its capacity. And so Aristotle says that he loves, out of all the devices, he loves metaphor the most, and use of too much metaphors and too much foreign words in the poetry will make it quite confusing and uninteresting for the readers. So chapter 19 to 21 is dedicated to the language of tragedy, what kind of a language it should use. When he calls in the definition of tragedy that it should have some magnitude in itself, with having some poetic diction. So this is diction. Poems which uses, or the poetic language which the poet uses, should carry some rhetorics in itself. So that's all about this chapter, about these chapters, chapter 19 to 22. So you can ask your question into the comment box, or you can directly message me on my WhatsApp number. Have a great day.